All right, guys, we're coming off a blowout loss at home to Texas A&M. Auburn 63, Texas A&M 79. We lost by 16 points in Neville Arena. I honestly didn't think we had that in us in this team. I thought even in our bad offensive performances at home, we would get that extra 10-point cushion and we would take games into rock fights and it would be low scoring. I didn't think we'd ever give up 70% from three at one point to the other team from like 10 shots. I didn't think we'd ever, I don't know. I didn't think we'd look this bad on defense, gave up 79 at home. It was just very a sad way to lose the home winning streak. We had 28 game home losing or home winning streak that was the number one in the nation. Now UCLA has it. Just a sad loss that maybe in my head is a bit of a wake up call on what this team is. I think we might have a little bit of debate on that. I think we got a little excited these last couple crappy games against bad teams that have also been blown out and actually been blown out worse than we blew them out. And now in our first big kind of turning the corner into a harder schedule, we get blown out at home, which is very rare for us. And I don't know. I think that's what we'll be talking about, Matt. Is there a way? Is this a wake up call for this team, or is it going to change your view of this team?
Not really. I mean, I'm surprised to hear you say you didn't think we could like trail by 8 to 12 points against but so let's talk
At
about
home, at home. I give that 10-point cushion. I really thought our
sure.
defense would stay locked in enough that
Did
we
you
would
not
never
feel
really let a team beat us by more than 15 at home.
did you okay, don't focus on I hate when people do it. Sorry, I'm gonna have a lot of rants tonight, so just like get ready.
We were losing by 15 and a half. We lost
Why
by
do we
15 in the
care?
second half.
Why like I just feel like if you watch basketball at all, the final score when games are fouling and people are like, I don't care.
But this game wasn't close. This game wasn't close
So
the entire second half. The
my
entire second
point
half, we never
was
got closer than 8, I think. And that was when we were on our runs and they hit us back every single time.
my point was at any point when we were down 8, 9, 10, 12, did you feel like it should have been that close?
I never thought the second half was going to be close to begin with, but I texted we were down
So
15. This team's not built to come back. And then when we went on little runs, we always did just enough wrong. But I knew we would because this team was not built to play this way on offense. It sped our clock up. You had a player like KD that was in panic mode when we should have been in urgent mode, in my opinion. And the whole team was like that. We just were never built for it. We never got close, even though the crowd would get excited when we would go on little 6, 7-point runs. They would hit right back every time. And we knew they would because this team's not built that way.
So I don't even, that was so long I didn't even remember my point. I don't remember what I asked. Look, the reason my perspective is the reason I was getting so excited about the last 5 wins is because I think we were faced very aggressively for the 2 or 3 weeks before this 5-game winning streak with how bad it could look. So I was just thrilled we're stacking wins where we could stack wins. I would ask some people like, yeah, it's a sucky way to lose the home winning streak, but what's the good way? What's the good way to lose the home? I mean, I know we didn't look good tonight. We didn't play well. We'll talk about all the things why. I'm still encouraged a little bit that we played that bad, and there were just so many moments where we're right in the game, and that's the Neville Arena factor. That's what you're talking. I still think that.
I didn't think we were in the game the whole second half. We went on little 5-6 point runs, and that was it. We never really took it back to anything within striking distance.
I'm not talking about the actual scores. I'm talking about Janai Broome getting a pass right in his hands to make it a 7-point game or an 8-point game.
That's as close as it got, right?
It out of bounds. I'm talking about fast break turnovers when we have a chance to get that going the other way because we got tons of stops in the second half. I don't think A&M made 8 or 10 shots in the second half. Our defense was much better. We made good adjustments. We gave ourselves a chance. The offense just wasn't good enough. I agree with you.
Dude, we lost the second half even.
Okay, right? But focus. Like, I don't understand why we care that we fouled for the last 4 minutes and we're focused on losing by 16. That's not.
I didn't think we played any better than them in the second half. Maybe it was even.
I did.
I didn't think we played better.
I definitely did. I thought we played a lot better. We'll get into that. But we can't go this far. I don't know what your thoughts are. I know, look, there was a lot of A&M. I don't know. People thought they weren't good. I hope if you watch that game as like, try to not be biased. That is a tough team to play. I mean, they are physical. They out physicaled us. That's one of my big concerns. And I thought they had a tremendous plan, and I think the game really swung. Tyrese Radford was incredible, unbelievable performance by him to lead A&M. And to me, the difference in the game was Auburn's perimeter defense that we've talked about. Like that's got to be our calling card. They got drove by all night, and then A&M's perimeter defense was just filthy. And they had a great plan, and they executed it. And we saw some of the flaws that we know are there with this team kind of show.
Crazy frustrating down the stretch when we were trying to make that comeback every time we'd get it close, and we could not even take a three half the time because their perimeter defense was so good. I couldn't even blame Jalen or Wendell or several players from not taking the three that we really needed because their defense was so strong, and you would think it would open things up down low, and we just couldn't quite get it down low either. So I don't know what we were supposed to do there. I know we're trying to figure out, we never did really figure out how to talk about losses necessarily, but like the way I framed it, I guess we could go down stats if you want or not. My whole frame of mind right now is that we played a bunch of crappy teams in a row. In my head, maybe I got too high on the team because I said a good team blows out these bad teams like this. And I said, maybe this is going to indicate that we're turning that corner. I mean, we saw a lot of players coming out that we thought were going to come out, and these players are going to make a difference. And I thought, okay, now we have this perfect opportunity, another home game against Texas A&M here. We have this set up to kind of go down the stretch. Sure, we have this away West Virginia. It's going to be weird, but another home at Georgia. And then we have a couple, then the really hard schedule starts. And we were talking about Texas A&M coming into this. Sure, they started the SEC pretty hot, but they also played some crappy teams. And most people were talking about Paper Tiger. And man, this will be our first like decent team we're going to play, really, if you look at our schedule. And then we're going to blow them out at home, or we're going to play well at home in Neville Arena. And then that'll kind of show that we're a legit team. We get blown out, and it's just changed my head all the way around that, man, we played some crappy teams. And then I think if you're put yourself in a neutral position on what Auburn is, you knew we were struggling before we came to the SEC. You look at who we play and who we, blew out. They weren't very good. And then the first real test, we get blown out at home. And so it just makes me think like, man, maybe we were never past that Georgia game or that Memphis game. Maybe that's who we are. And we need to thank God we pulled off those away games, which I know we talked about at the time, but I think it's crazy to think that we did not think we were better than this.
I just think everything about that's wrong. I don't think you can do transitive property in college basketball. I think that gets proven time and time again. Mississippi State almost beat Bama on the road tonight. They're 1-6. They're one of those bad teams that you're talking about. Why did Gonzaga lose their home winning streak and let us have the undefeated? They lost to, I don't even know who it was. I forget. They lost to somebody that wasn't very good. It happens. It's frustrating the way this happened. I'd rather us focus more on the things that we saw, because there's a reason 360 something teams didn't have a longer winning streak than 28. I mean, it's just, it happens. And all you got to do is look around the league. One of my goals for tonight's pod, I think we embarrassed ourselves a little bit after the Georgia game. It was too reactionary. That's a fan podcast. That's what we're going to do. That's fine. But you're right. And we said we get too high probably when we win and too low.
I think we got too high when we win. We were just right when we lost. And now we're back to where we were after the Georgia game.
How can you say that, though, when we're on this podcast questioning if we can we get to 9 conference wins? And look, we still have to. We only have 6. But
we just ran through the bottom, 4 or 5 of them, right? Like those were the most winnable games on the schedule. We won the most winnable ones, and the rest of them are going to be harder than those winnable ones.
They were not any different when we were looking at it 3 weeks ago. We've talked since the preseason pod episode about the first half being easier. I don't understand. I'm just saying there's a reason. Okay, a couple things. Non-biased people, you know how much points we were favored by tonight?
How many?
4. In Neville Arena, 4. I don't think this is some massive upset. I think A&M is going to be in the tournament. I think they're really good. Okay. Maybe they're not really good. I think they're a tournament team, and they showed me. Now, granted, they were out of character. They hit some shots early, especially. I don't think it's as bad of a loss as it probably feels. But you're right. It's not going to get any easier. We have a tough schedule. We got to play them again. In College Station, we get Tennessee twice. We get Alabama twice. But hey. The SEC doesn't feel sorry for us. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I guess we can get to some stats before I embarrass myself anymore with how upset I am with this and how it's going to change my entire mindset on this team. But maybe in a pod or two, it won't matter, and I'll look back. Yeah.
The good news is your mindset will probably change in the next week with the next couple games. So
we'll see. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. If we talk narrative real quick on this game, if you didn't get to watch it, or if you were like me that got screwed over by ESPN, I don't know if I'm the only one. If I know Ben did too, and luckily Ben found me a nice pirate stream. I'm a big fan of pirating ESPN games because screw them. Their whole stream was messed up the entire night. It was behind by like 20 minutes because they tried to throw over from ESPN News to ESPN2, and they had to start over from there for a while and never fixed it. Didn't do it at halftime. Didn't do it the entire time. It kept crapping out. It sucked. But narrative wise for the actual game, for if you watched, we went on this great run at the very beginning of the game, went down 2-0. And then we scored 10 straight, I believe. We looked like the team I thought and hoped we could be. Just looked confident. The passes were great, fast breaks, hitting shots. It was a ton of fun. I was like, yes, we are proving out that those big wins against crappy teams was just us evolving. And then Texas A&M hit a 3, and they hit another 3, and another 3, and another 3, and another 3, and another 3. And they were shooting 70% from 3 at one point, I think, with 10 shots. Shot 7 of 10, I believe, in the first half. I think maybe they started shooting a couple more down the stretch that probably ended the second half with, but it was above 50%, I believe, at halftime. And it just really set this whole game up because once they went up 15 at halftime, it changed how we had to play in the second half. We looked a little freaked out. We were trying to speed the clock up a little bit, bring a little bit of urgency. And like I said, with KD and some other players, I felt like the urgency sometimes turned into panic at times. I mean, there was times where we brought that back down to 8, I believe, is the closest we ever brought it, maybe 7. And every single time, 8, I think it was, every single time somebody would make a kind of a frantic play. The one that hurt the worst was probably right down at the end. It always hurts the worst when you're down that much. Every mistake hurts more than before. There was one where we got down to 8 and we had, I think, 4 or 5 minutes left. And look, all right, if we're going to do it, it has to be right now. And like Broom fumbled the ball out of bounds, and that was it for the rest of the night, pretty much. And Matt, I don't know if you want to talk about this. I think your idea, and maybe it's not your idea, but I think it's your idea, that when you're down a certain amount of points and you're looking at the clock, you got to stay on schedule. Anyways, explain it, because I always follow that. And then people get upset with me that I'm like, this game is over. We're down 15 or 10 with this much time left. But like, we've only ever seen it one time in the like several years we've been watching together, that your idea was wrong.
The general idea is in the second half, if you're trailing, you want to be trailing by less than the amount of minutes left. So for us, starting out in a 15-point hole, all you're trying to do is win segments, right? I call them segments between TV timeouts. The first 4 minutes, the next 4 minutes, the next 4 minutes. First segment, we cut it to 12, which I always say that's right on schedule, right? 15, 12, 9, 8, or 15, 12, 9, 6, 3. Then we had opportunities in the next 2 segments to kind of get it closer, and we would fumble it away. We would have a turnover, some missed, like some freak things like that led to some easy baskets for them. Like you said, I think the thing that makes this theory, I need to patent it or name it or something, but the thing that makes that so true is, like you said, your margin for error when you're down double digits against a quality team is just really low. You have to play pretty clean basketball. And we just couldn't quite put enough, like there were multiple strings of stops we got. Like the first half, we weren't getting stops.
And the basketball is a game of runs, and the other, like, you're going to make your run. And we saw it all this game down the second half, the comeback runs. They would just go back when they had their run. They would just come right back the other way. So you got to be like chipping away, kind of. Your run needs to be 8 or 9, while theirs is 4 or 5, kind of thing. And you can kind of tell with the clock where you really are, because the run sometimes can be deceiving. This also helps. Maybe you call it the Matt's comeback system or something like that. Sorry, I've had a cough all week, but I forgot where I was going. And it is. It helps when you're winning too. Sometimes you could freak out when the other team goes on a run when you're winning. You can go up 10, 15. You're like, oh no, here it comes. The other team's coming back. If you're kind of not narcissistic, but pessimistic like me, you can kind of look at that clock and be like, all right, we're still up 9 with 4 minutes left. We should be good.
Yep. Yeah. The other piece of that equation is it's all about getting to that last TV timeout within a possession. You really need to be within like 3 points if possible. And then it's kind of an even game. And can you make the most of your possessions down the stretch? We had our opportunities to do that, as bad as it was. So let's dial in a little bit, though, because I think the conversation around the first half is interesting. You mentioned the 10-0 run after A&M goes up 2-0. Do you remember if A&M was kind of doing kind of that 3/4 court pressure to start the game? I think they were.
This is where it gets real weird for me, because right about that time when ESPN News switched over, I listened to a lot of the first half with Sonny Smith and Andy, which was great. I got to keep up with it, and you get to hear some funny stuff from Sonny. The other issue was the game was like behind by 20 minutes. So I was half listening to Sonny and them explain what was happening real time while watching a 20-minute ago replay on the TV. So sorry if I don't see like every, long explanation.
I just think we burned their press pretty bad. I think we got some open looks. We hit our shots. Wendell hit a tough three to start, and then we just got some really good looks, and we made them. And they were kind of hedging that ball screen against Wendell, which we've talked about on this podcast a lot. And he was finding Janai Broome in the middle, and he was finishing or he was dishing, and it was going really well. And like you said, we got a great start. But after that, A&M settled in on I guess this is as I remember it. I'm in Phoenix in a work thing, so I can't record and go back. I think they quit with the pressure and they sat back in their half court. And that really started to turn the game. A lot of people are going to talk about the 3-point shooting. It was very frustrating. We've been elite, from that 3-point defense. And I think, honestly, this is going to be a controversial take. I think we showed why tonight. They end up at 37%. It's a little higher than we'd want. I just felt like, because here's the thing, you can focus on percentages all you want, but you have to pay attention to how the threes are coming up. And the first one they hit was Wade Taylor from the logo. I mean, he's a good shooter. He's one of their better players, but you kind of live, and it was contested. I mean, all you can do as a defender is get a hand up and contest. And I would, as I remember it, out of those 7 threes, there might have been 1 or 2 that we were a step late. Every other one, it's like in transition with a guy's hand in his face. Like, you can't do anything differently defensively against that.
I think like when they were going in, it was one of those things where sometimes it's just not your night. Sometimes it's the other team's night, and they do something ridiculous like hit 7 of their first 10 threes, and it changes the game completely.
291st in the country in 3-point shooting. A&M was coming in. We're number 2 nationally in 3-point defense. So, but a great thing we've talked about all year. I think this team is very vulnerable when weird stuff like that happens. Like, I think if there's a 10 or 20-point swing in the threes, like, that's going to be hard for us at times.
I really was like ready to even have that in the can at halftime. Sometimes it's just not your night. And I just assumed in the second half that we'd play better in the second half than we did. And it would be kind of like end up a closer game. We lose it. And we just go, man, it's just one of those nights where the other team got hot and we lost by 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever. It's because they got hurt early. I just got so disappointed with how we played in the second half also that I think it's a little combo of it being a bad night for us, and then also getting exposed a bit after playing weaker teams and seeing like, oh, now we got some real athletes to play against. And some of these issues that we saw in the cracks at times, and like in the offseason we talked about, kind of got exposed here. Some of the guard play issues got exposed, some of the Jalen not being confident enough to go in there and dominate somebody his size. I think it's just a lot of combinations of things, and I don't know what else to say on that.
Yeah, look, I think that, so the 3-point, the 3-pointers were huge. I mean, they really did flip the game. We were not getting as many good looks against their offense, although we really scored. We scored 25 in the first 10 or 12 minutes. We were actually doing really well. A crazy stat that I think A&M deserves credit for, even if they haven't played the best teams. We scored the most points anybody's scored against them in the first half, and we only scored 30. And we only scored 2 in the last 6 minutes of the first half. So A&M's a good defensive team. They're another one of these teams in this league that is so physical, and they're a defensive presence, honestly. So the other piece to talk about with that, when we're playing teams like this, I think you see the small guards thing sometimes rear its ugly head in 2 ways. Number one, in helping rebound, you don't get as much help from KD and Wendell and Zep rebounding, and we need more bodies going to the glass, and we did do that in the second half. We fought harder on the glass, but it wasn't good enough. And the other thing, some of those threes, they're contested. Wendell's there, Zep's there, Flan's there, KD's there, but when their guy's 6 inches taller than you, that ain't gonna, that gives them room to elevate and shoot. So I do think that is something to talk about for sure.
It's interesting. We the personality we've kind of put onto this team is that they're an amazing defensive team, and that's we're gonna hang our hat on. And every time we lose, though, it seems to be the defense's issue. We let them score 79 tonight. We scored 63. I mean, my whole thing was hold teams to 70, but even then our offense hasn't really gotten past 70 much. But like every time we do lose, it's like tonight, the Texas A&M team was not a great offensive team. We let them score 79 in Neville Arena. So that's what's so infuriating when that's supposed to be our thing is the defense. And then we watch other teams score on us. And it happens during the game all the time. We talk about it. We say like, man, it's not the defense that's letting us down right now, or it's not the offense that's letting us down right now. We're actually scoring okay. We scored more points than ever in the first half against Texas A&M than anybody else has done. It's the defense that's let us down at times.
Here's a great conversation because we'll just really disagree if you go the other way on this. If you had to pick offense or defense, which lost us the game?
Which for this game?
Yep.
Defense lost us this game.
No way. There's just no way. I don't know. I don't see that at all. You can focus on 79 all you want.
If they score more than 70 points, I'm going to say the defense lost a game every time for us. With the way this team is set
arbitrary.
Up. Maybe that's because I automatically assume this team's going to suck on offense, and so I put too much weight on the defense.
Yes.
But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right on that one. But I just say like this team, every time it goes above 70 points, we're screwed, in my opinion.
Well, I agree, but just ask yourself how they got to 70. Why did they get to 79? We started fouling with 5 or 6 minutes left in the half, and it drug out for 45 minutes. And they got
which was another really annoying one. You had a great text during the game. We got them up to like 6 fouls early in the second. It was like, all right, this is how you can come back. You can start getting a lot of free throws and go at them, guys. Go at them. We had like 2 or 3 fouls. They had 6. All of a sudden, I look up like a couple minutes later. We have 7 fouls and they have 6 still. So how did this happen? Like, how did you not attack that? Just little stuff like that throughout the second half that just didn't go our way.
Look,
we did go our way / we didn't do what we need to do.
Don't hear me wrong, listeners in Jackson. Okay, like our defense wasn't good enough tonight, but it's because we have to have. How many times have I said this year? Our defense has to be like really good. I think it really does, and it wasn't up to its standard tonight. I found. Here's what I'm going after. Okay, the second half, if you take out the weird fouling at the end where we just kept extending the game, we were on pace to hold them to like 20 or 25 points in the second half. We adjusted to zone, which was obvious, but I think they weren't expecting to have to do that this game with the 3-point matchup, and just A&M got really hot and they gave them a different look. They didn't hit a 3 in the second half. A lot of our fouls
were silly too, though. Yes. In the second half. I mean, I'm going to keep going back to it, but I want KD benched earlier. I know that Bruce had him out there for energy reasons, or maybe he can make those plays where he intercepts the ball and things. But man, he was such a detriment. I was saying KD has got to be Texas A&M's favorite player because he's just out there. Ben called it mashing buttons like a video game. I called it like when you're playing foosball and the other guy just starts spinning the stick. KD was flying around like a madman in the most reckless way every time, flying to the basket with the ball every time he got it, shooting the ball as soon as it hits its hand, like running up through a guy and just like hacking their arms as they go. Like, oh my God, none of it was smart at all. It was exactly what you want the other team to be doing when they're down, is freaking out and constantly fouling your guys. And so half these fouls are from freak outs even before we got down that stretch and started doing our annoying, you're down 10 with 2 minutes left fouling.
Yeah, no, it was not good. And I think that's where my frustration was. The offense was really good in the first 10 minutes, and then we got choked off. I mean, I didn't think the offense really showed up consistently after that. And I think 70, I've been very complimentary of your number. I totally agree with your number. I think I'm more disappointed by how hard it seemed tonight to get to 70 when we started out so hot. Like, it just felt like we weren't going to get there, even with all these late. I mean, again, the last 5 minutes drug out forever. And even that, like, a lot of times you see yourself get easy buckets or easy looks because the other team's like trying to. We didn't get anything easy the rest of the game.
I texted they were playing better defense than we were when they were up 10 because, their perimeter 3 defense down the stretch was really tough. I know it's because they knew we were hunting for 3, so that's a bigger deal. But, man, you saw Wendell and Jay and some people give up a 3 because they just could not take it with the guy in their face like that.
Yeah. Look, both sides have a lot to take. Maybe I was putting us a little on the spot saying offense or defense. They obviously both weren't good enough, right? I just thought, again, if you're looking for the defensive problem, I think a lot of people are going to focus on the threes. And like, to me, the defensive problem was we didn't turn them over. We lost turnover. We didn't rebound well enough. And the biggest problem was the perimeter guards like the difference between the way A&M was defending us and our guards on the other end, and then the way we could not stay in front. And it wasn't just Radford. Now, Radford was the key culprit that we had nobody. I mean, Flanagan was getting cooked, and his defense has been good all year. Leor could not take him. That went really badly for a minute. Nobody could really stay in front of him, and a couple other perimeter guys. So that's
we just don't have that it guy. We kind of like when we were winning, it was like, oh, it's fun. We don't have the it guy. We have a team. But sometimes, man, you wish you had that it guy.
I'm talking about defensively. I'm talking about simple basketball. Basketball is all about staying in front of your guy. We've talked all year about we need to make them earn it, right?
We kind of had those it guys defensively in some Walker Kessler last year, Isaac Okoro 2 or 3 years ago, Chumo Kiki, where guys are like, man, they're going to lock their guy down. And I'm sure to extent we have some of that this year too with Zepp or Flanagan or somebody. But like, even then, I know people talk so much about the Honey Badger Zepp and everything. I'm sure he's locked in, but I don't know. I just don't have a guy in this team that I'm like, put this guy in their best guy and then we're going to slow him down.
Yeah, Zepp did the best job, and he really spearheaded that zone that kind of really gave us a fighting chance and gave us a lot of opportunities to get back in the game. He was really good at the top of that. But
let's go down some stats here. I think you got down the sheet here. Shout out to the guy who does this again. Who's the guy that puts these together?
Justin Ferguson posts it. I don't know who puts it together. But.
Well, shout out to Justin Ferguson for posting it. It's always super useful. Turnovers, 14 for Auburn, 9 for Texas A&M. So we lost the turnover battle. Even bigger number, they scored 18 points off turnovers. We scored 6. It felt like that in the second half too. We just could not capitalize off their turnovers. We would play some schemes sometimes, and the crowd would erupt because we finally got turned. I mean, they threw the ball straight away out through the air, the back of the behind the goal at one point, and it was like, oh my god, here we go, and just couldn't do anything the other way around. So total rebounds, Texas A&M 32, we got 28, lost that one. Let's see, offensive rebounds, lost that 9-7. Second chance points 8-6, lost that one. Bench point, we even lost bench points. How did we lose bench points? 13-9. Points in the paint actually was even, surprisingly. Blocks, we actually had 10 blocks. So maybe that's the one thing we can hang our hat on. This one is blocks. We'll go back to talking about the block party again and see where we're at, because I know it's not been quite as thrilling from the block party's perspective as before. But I don't know, those are the stats that we just lost the majority. I mean, the biggest one that I didn't even read because I was kind of going through the off stats here is 37% from 3 to 19% from 3. And it's not just that we shot 19% from 3, because we've been talking about for several games. We usually hold the other team to a lower percent from 3 than we shoot. And so it's kind of like a plus minus situation here where they are plus 20% or whatever on us in 3% percentage from 3. And that's what matters.
That's part of the game, right? You got to make shots. And ultimately, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can look at a basketball game, but you're right. Like they hit 4 more threes than us. That's 12 points. And I wanted to point out on the turnovers, ours were just live ball turnovers. And the way you see that 9 steals for A&M, that's how you get those points off turnovers. A&M's turnovers were often dead ball turnovers. So we're getting the ball back, but we don't get out at all. And even on the chances I thought A&M's transition defense was terrific. So that's a huge thing. And I texted y'all this morning. I just woke up. I had this. A&M is so physical, and they've had so much success against us over the years. I just felt like it was going to be one of those defensive, like rebounding and turnovers. And the reason those are so important, you might think we overemphasize those on this pod. Here's where that shows up. It was actually worse until the last few minutes when I looked at the stats, but A&M got 7 more shots than us. They made 5 more shots than us. When you turn the ball over, don't get a shot up. And when you don't clean up your defense, when they get more offensive rebounds and more second chances, they're getting more chances to shoot. And in this game, they made a higher percentage, and that's why you lose. So all those little things, taking care of the ball and getting shots up when you had a chance, and then just this, honestly, it's not a terrible rebounding effort against A&M, but didn't you just feel like A&M kind of pushed us around at times? Didn't it feel that way?
Oh yeah, definitely. Tell them about the stats you were saying before the podcast about Texas A&M having our number in basketball, man, especially in Auburn Arena and Neville Arena.
Yeah, don't quote me on this. This is all quick Twitter recap, but I believe it's either 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 in Neville Arena that A&M's won, which is wild with the record we talked about. And since A&M came in the SEC, they're now 10-4 overall against Auburn and 5-2 in the last 7 meetings.
They've gotten our number, man. It's really frustrating. I don't know if we can call them like I want to say like the new South Carolina where
New Kermit Davis.
Yeah, new Kermit Davis kind of, but they're dominating us worse than even those two guys. Really, those guys were really frustrating. But these stats are bad. Buzz Williams has figured something out with Auburn, and I do not want to play them again. We don't play them again this year, right?
Yeah,
we do in Texas A&M. Let's get some revenge, I guess. I don't know what to think anymore about home versus away because we dominated our away games and now we're getting blown out at home. So we'll see what happens. Maybe we reverse something. Maybe the scouts different this time around. The other weird one I saw, bench points. We're so used to beating the bench points. They scored 13, we scored 9, and I could feel it when the bench players were on, when it was Trey and Cardwell and KD and I don't know who else was in there, but you could feel it when our bench guys were in. Maybe it's because we were down at times. We needed that offense to come back, but man, it felt like we couldn't do anything when those guys were on the floor, and it hadn't really felt like that this year. Usually we could kind of play through it and not really think too hard about it, but I don't know. It just you felt the difference.
Absolutely. We should mention Chris Moore came back, which is good to see him like playing, although I guess he busted his lip in the first practice and he had stitches in his lip and he's got his shoulder thing. But so I'm glad he was able to play. The interesting thing was first game Johan hasn't played all year. And I think it was to reward Lior because Lior's been playing well to keep him in the 10-man rotation. But I thought it was a very interesting move to play Chris Moore at power forward in this game in 12 minutes. Like that was more than Johan was playing. I could have used more Jalen on the floor. I know he played 28 and he had his own issues that we could talk about. It was an interesting strategy to me to play undersized Chris Moore at power forward for, 30% of this game against that A&M front line.
I did not like it. It's really funny that we got so excited about Johan maybe turning the corner by hitting a couple of shots and looking a little more comfortable last game. Just did not play any minutes at all. It's so wild. I get that like there's only so many minutes on this team. It's just so funny that the minute we think we're going to see more of him is the minute it got taken away. But you know what I would do different? I'm gonna bring it up because I get so frustrated with KD. This is the worst game KD's played, in my opinion, this entire time, and the most like detrimental he's played the entire time. I want to see Lior at 2 sub. I want Chris Moore back at 3, and I want to see Lior take some minutes off of KD. KD this game, man. Maybe Bruce got in his ear and told him to go out there and be Tasmanian Devil or whatever in the second half. But it felt like a huge aggression from an attitude standpoint that he went out there and said he was going to go make this game happen. And it made us go play way worse by how he played. I'd love to see Lior out there. And clearly we need still some 3-point shooting. KD can't bring it. Put Lior there. And I know Lior can be defensive liability against some of these great athletes, but so can KD. So
I disagree with the attitude part. I agree with the not great effectiveness part. I didn't hate it as much as you did just because I didn't see much life from anybody else on the offensive end. I didn't exactly see anybody else, at that, I felt like at the point he was pushing, I just didn't hate it as much as you. 3 turnovers in 18. Just think about this. I forgot until last week. You weren't on the last pod. He was second team All SEC preseason, and he is playing less minutes than Zep.
He's playing badly. So I was about to say, like, we got the benefit from it last year where we need a guy like him to step up and be like, screw it, I'm going to take over this game. I'm going to do what it needs to happen to win. But he's been playing so badly this year. I'm just going to need, like, this is another attitude thing.
Are you saying bench him, or are you saying just play him like
I really want like an aggressive timeout. You're not playing the rest of the game at one point with some of the frantic fouls he was taking and bad shots he was taking. He was playing us out of the game with what game was left to be played. Like it felt like you take him out and maybe you need that energy or something. But I was ready to just be like, screw it. Whatever you're doing out there is making this worse. And so you can't be playing anymore. So I'm saying I don't want him like benched like Johan was this game, but I want less minutes and I want Lior to take some of those. And just say, KD, go hustle plays. Don't think that, like, I don't know how you sit a guy like that attitude down. You can't really, because that's KD, and that's just who you decide to spin the wheel with another year. But it just sucks that he's playing so badly and he plays so loudly badly, because that's who he is. And it worked for us at times last year, and it's going very badly for us this year.
It worked for us some in non-conference too. I think people forget he had some really good moments earlier this year as well.
And part of the issue is that people like Jalen, who we needed to take more shots this game, just like went from a really confident play he had early in the game where he faked a three, drove it in, and dished it to Broom. Man, I was like, wow, this is the turning point with Jalen. He's so confident now. I've been asking for years to have a 4-position guy that can fake the three and drive it in, and he finally does that. And then the rest of the game just goes quiet mode. He does not have that gear to say, give me the ball. And we needed it bad this game. And that's why KD has to take overtimes, because no one else is doing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've debated Jalen forever. He does have that. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just, I think A&M I think a lot of people are realizing that he is one of the keys. Like we've been saying, I do think they defended him pretty well, especially at the 3-point line. Like I'm trying to think through all the touches he had, and I just don't remember ever seeing one where I was like, come on, Jalen, you got to shoot that. Like, that's a really good look. I just didn't remember him getting much, but that's where, and this is really Jalen's fault, but I'm going to come to Jalen's defense a little bit. That's where the bench needs to help him a little bit. We've got to force the ball to him. And I think we've seen that a lot this year, where you've got to get him in the post. He didn't get a post touch till 3 minutes left in the game. You got to get him in that little middle, that mid-range that we've seen so much. And like I said at halftime, I would have loved to have seen. They're really scared to take Broom off the floor, and Broom's good. Like I think it's obvious that Broom's a good player. But I would have loved to have seen Jalen in that center spot just to get the ball when they hedge that ball screen with Wendell at the top. If you can get it to Jalen at the free throw line and it's 4-on-3 from there, like that's where he thrives. He had incredible assists tonight. 7 assists led to, 16, 18 points with 2s and 3s. He led us in assists. So he was touching the ball a decent amount. I think they were focused on him and he was making the right play, which is what Jalen does. But you're right. We're not going to win many games. 8 points is garbage. He had 4 points. He had 4 points when this game was, and 3 shots when this game was decided. That's not enough.
Brutal. Any other specific players you want to talk about down there? I mean, Broom 16 points, Green 16 points, led the team in points.
Let's talk about Broom was good. People might not like that. I thought Broom battled the bigs pretty well. He was pretty effective. He had some plays like everybody did in the second half where we had opportunities and he just couldn't quite make that next play to really get us closer. I thought he played okay though. I think the bigger concern, and I hate to even go there, but like Wendell against this length, like I thought A&M just played him so well, and it just worries me. Not everybody has a team of A&M wing, tall, long guys to defend him, but the teams that do, I mean, and he only shot it. He was 4 for 9. He wasn't bad. He got to the line some. He made his free throws. He hit the first 3. He had 5 assists. But man, 5 turnovers, and he really had some uncharacteristic turnovers tonight. He struggled.
Yeah, he got trapped several times during this game, which is kind of like the strategy we worry about, the nightmare we worry about. He got him out for the most part, the players, but even once he gets him out, you kind of need to thrive off of that, and you couldn't really thrive. You just kind of got reset a bunch of these times. It just changes the offense altogether, slows us down. All of a sudden, you look up. I think there was one really bad when we got trapped, got the ball out of Smythe. They got it back to him. I think it was like 8 or maybe more, about 10, probably seconds left on the shot clock. All he did was dribble a bit and shot like a long contested 3 with about 5 seconds left on the shot clock. And that's not an offense. And that was all because the trap got him early. And so that's something we're watching the entire time. Sucks that Texas A&M could pull that off. You wonder how many other teams down the stretch are going to be able to pull that off. And it's part of what I wondered about the kind of, re-envisioning of this team, the kind of wake up on this, like, oh man, yeah, we did play some crappier teams and Wendell didn't get trapped and Wendell got to thrive and get these good assists and look better out there. And that's kind of those fatal Achilles heel flaws and kind of what do you expect? What do you want out of Auburn? I think coming into the SEC, you can go back and listen to our podcast that we were just happy to make the NCAA tournament, happy to stay in the top 25. And then when you have a loss like this and you start thinking about Tennessee and Alabama potentially winning the SEC, it gets real frustrating. It gets real sad. You're like, I want more. I can't believe we can't do more.
Who's kind of in the race? Yes.
Texas A&M.
6-1 Texas A&M. You're I just think, and I don't think this is crazy. I mean, I think we know what we're getting from Broom. I know he's been up and down a little bit, but I think we know who Janai Broom is, and he's a really good player. And I'm glad we got him because you would kind of be a little scared what we would have without him. But I think we're going to kind of go as Wendell, Jalen, and Flanagan go, and maybe you throw KD in there if he could ever figure. That's probably not going to happen. But we've seen KD be a double-digit scorer and make some really winning plays. I mean, how many times last year and even this year have we seen that? So, but we're going to go as those vets go. And I know that's the bigger argument about like recruiting and transfers and stuff. But we're 16-4 and 6-2, so they're going to have their opportunities but they're going to have to play really special. Look, we've known with this team, they're going to have to play real special to beat elite teams. Can we do it? Absolutely. We definitely can. I think we can hang in against anybody. Bruce has at least earned that. Even if you think this team is trash, which I don't, you have to at least trust Bruce's background and the fact that he just reeled off 5 wins. We can go back and say the schedule's bad, but nobody was saying we're going to win 5 straight, 3 on the road.
I think there were some stats. ESPN has some interesting kind of statistics where somebody said there was like a 16% chance that we'd win all 5 of those. So that was pretty cool that we pulled that off. There was like a 4-hour podcast we did to end last season because I think we just needed to talk through our feelings, and we got real deep about recruiting in the modern era and can you roll the dice with Wendell again and Jalen again and these different players when you kind of have to set up we can get the whole thing. So go if you want to hear deep like what we think about the future of recruiting and how you set up a team and if this was the right way to do it or not, go back to that podcast. We won't get into it on this one, but I was just looking at Alan Flanagan's number here, and he's been kind of consistently giving us like really 8 recently, sometimes more than 8. But man, he didn't feel this inefficient when I was watching, but 3 of 10 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3. That hurts. I know he still got 8 points. I don't know if I guess some of that's from the free throw line also, but man, we need him to hit at least like 1-3 a game, I think. Hopefully 2. I think we only hit 3 threes all game, 2 from Zepp, 1 from Wendell, and those 2 were early. Zepp's, I think, just kind of kept us in it at one point early in the first. So that means we didn't hit a 3 the entire second half. Oh my God. I can't believe
that might have hit one of his in the second half. I don't remember. But
I think he hit an open 3 early and then hit another 3 during their big run in the second. I don't think we had a 3 the entire second half. And man, that's brutal when you're trying to come back from down 15 at home.
And that's where, look, everybody gets on the coaches, right? Because I think they got blitzed in the first half. We all felt it. It was like, oh man, like we were not expecting this. I think if they had it to do over, because I don't know about you, I'm just thinking back on the game. Like, I just didn't feel like we were passing up open 3s. I didn't think we were seeing them. So, okay, if we're not getting open looks from 3, to me, that's where you have even more of a responsibility to say, okay, Jalen in the post, Broom in the post, Flanagan going to the basket off curling around a screen, like get going downhill. And I think we tried to do something.
It wasn't the scouting report coming to this, right? I mean, we were close to posting a scouting report on Twitter or whatever, and everyone I was hearing and everyone I was reading from was saying they want to clog up the middle and force you to shoot 3s. We kind of had an opposite game, right? It felt like the perimeter defense was killer. Maybe so was their middle defense, and that's why we didn't do anything at all. But it felt like they were out there hot on the 3 line when it was supposed to be the other way around.
Yeah, and I think part of that is our personnel and the way you play us. Like I think so. Here's the thing about defense, right? So like if you're Auburn and you're watching A&M hit all these 3s, you know what you naturally do as a defender? You're going to get just a little further up. You're going to get a little more aggressive. We can't give them the 3. They're hitting all their 3s. We got to get up there and contest the 3s. What does that do? Leaves you vulnerable to get beat around the corner, right? And get beat to the basket. And that's what started happening. So
I meant on defense.
I know.
Yeah, sorry.
Reverse that in the second half. A&M knows they don't have to really respect our 3-point shooting. And when we would drive in, I think they got really comfortable with the scouting report about, halfway through the first half and say, oh, Auburn, they're not going to finish against our trees inside. We can kind of funnel them in there. Really good help defense, which is classic Buzz Williams ball. And like, we can defend at the 3-point line and we can trust our help if they go inside. And that makes it tough with some of the limitations that we know we have.
Well, I don't know if you have any other specific players or stats. I know we're trying to see if we keep this one a little shorter and move on to the next thing. I don't,
late night,
I'll let you.
Late night Eastern time.
Is there anything else you want to point out real quick before we do like around the SEC quickly?
No, frustrating loss.
We'll see how the numbers do on this podcast. I think we see a big drop when we have a bad loss, and we might just start having to like short up and do 30-minute losses. Because also I feel like I started this podcast super emotional about this loss, and I still think I stand by it. But I think every time we have a big loss, I kind of always wish when I go back, if I listen to it or think about it, that I kept it to like 20 minutes and just talked stats and then got out of there.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. We gotta process it. So
I hope you guys enjoy our like going through it, dealing with it. I don't know if it makes you guys feel like less alone and some like you have friends to talk about it with or something, or maybe you just absolutely hate it and just like wanted to know how we lost and hated or like connipting about it.
I know I'm in the 1% here, but I don't know. I just find it comical in a sport that's so up and down, like every night around the country. We know it mentally, and yet I don't understand leaving with 3 minutes left when you've won 28 straight home games, when it's like a 10-point game. I don't get that.
People are real funny in Auburn, Alabama about the traffic. It kills. I mean, maybe some of these, I guess some, I don't know. Maybe some of these people are driving from like 2 hours away on a weeknights, but like even then at that point, you've already made the decision. Like, what's the difference between 20 minutes or something, But
the same thing, look, everybody's emotional. I'm sure everybody sent out a text at halftime like this, but call Jackson out here. He's like, well, should I even watch this? Like, and I get the feeling, but you learn. I just feel like as somebody who likes to like study the game and watch the game, I feel like you learn so much more when you're in those spots. Like, there's so much to soak up about how do we handle it? That's the most we've been punched in the face in a while. Like, for me personally, as a fan watching, that first half was like, oh, like we're in some trouble here. And I was really curious to see how we handle it. And I actually thought we played better in the second. But
I was going to watch it no matter what for this podcast, but I think we've been talking about all season. This team was not built for comebacks. And so when we went down 15, my texts were calling out that like, hey guys, don't get excited when they go on runs and things. This team was not built for comebacks. Just like, we're going to be watching this game, like you said, from a learning standpoint. I'm not watching this game anymore from a winning standpoint. And that sucks at halftime because we've had teams in the past that were built for those comebacks. And we saw some amazing comebacks. I even texted too at one point, Javon McCormick is not coming through that door because he had an amazing comeback against LSU a couple years back when there was like 5 minutes left and we were down 15. But man, yeah, we just learned stuff down the stretch. But here's around the SEC. Florida beat South Carolina pretty handedly, 81-60. That's another example of, one of those teams we beat, and that's about what we beat them by. We don't think Florida's supposed to be that good. Tennessee beats Georgia 70-41. Really kills. So I turn these games on sometimes because I'm like, you never know with some of these SEC matchups, and then Tennessee and Alabama just really bowled through them. We lost, and then Alabama was down at halftime by 10, just like we were. And I was like, all right, well, it's going to really suck that the night the Bama finally loses in the SEC, we lose too. And then we lose and they don't lose at all, which sucks because they have a good offense and they were built for the comeback. And they probably back 66-63 over Mississippi State in Alabama. So they're still undefeated. It feels like it's kind of turning into that year. I didn't want to admit that Alabama was as good as they are. I'm just at this point hoping and praying that Purdue doesn't go down so they don't get that number 1 ranking. But at this point, looking at their schedule too, they still have, I think, a couple more games. Actually, I don't know. They play somebody good in the Big 12 Challenge or no?
Live podcasting here.
Yeah.
Let's see. They play at Oklahoma, so no.
No. I think look at Alabama's schedule real quick because I feel like there's still a couple more games they have left against not great opponents before they play Tennessee and Auburn and a couple other.
Oh,
teams. But really, there's only really like two teams, us and Tennessee, that, are in the top 25 now. And then I don't have a lot of faith that I know we love Neville Arena, but we just experienced that it's not perfect.
Yeah, theirs is not terrible. I guess they've already beat.
They're at Oklahoma, then in Nashville versus at home versus Vandy, at LSU, then Florida, then at Neville Arena. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4 more games that are pretty winnable. Florida might give them something, but that's at home. LSU really sucks. Vanderbilt's at home. At Oklahoma, maybe. I don't know much about Oklahoma really, but so it seems like, man, that I feel like they're going to get the number one ranking, even if Purdue doesn't go down. Just there's a lot of hype right now for them.
Tonight won't help. Mississippi State's not very good, and as you've said, because all of our wins are bad, Mississippi State went in there, and that would have been a really bad loss for their resume. They pulled it out, so credit to them for that. But we'll see. I mean, but
that's the kind of game that like good teams in the SEC lose. Good teams do lose those kind of games, tight games, like where something happens, like the Mississippi. Great teams like have a game they should have lost and still win, like they're doing.
Mm-hmm. No, they're really good. I don't.
We had that last year with a couple games at Georgia, at Missouri, where great teams. There's any other night, any other less than great, you would have lost, but you pulled it off because you're a great team, even if it wasn't good. Pretty.
And they, really, you look ahead. I mean, they've got to go to Knoxville. That's the only time they play Tennessee. They have to go to A&M at the end of the year. I doubt that, you wouldn't think A&M will still be within striking distance there, but if they were a game back, that would be really interesting. But then it's Auburn twice, and that's kind of it.
The SEC, I mean, maybe it's just when Kentucky's not good, all of a sudden people say the SEC is soft this year, but I just don't think we're as good as our 15th ranking. Arkansas, man, they really screwed up, and they're not doing well at all. I think they're 1-6 or something in the SEC right now.
They've won back to back. They're coming back to 3-5.
Well, still, here we go. Here's the Musselman comeback. It's starting to turn into a trade market.
Look, it's very frustrating. I think the thing for Auburn people is just to remember that we did win the SEC last year, and that was pretty cool. And we had a bunch of cool stuff happen, and it's hard to do that every year. And we've got to clearly adjust some things and figure some things out. I think the thing, if you're looking for like encouragement, I know a lot of people look at Bruce Pearl sometimes on offense. We've talked about it over the years. Like, it doesn't always look great aesthetically, like it just never. But if you go look at his history, and maybe I'll do this for the next podcast, his teams are like always in the top 3 of the conference in scoring. So there's just something that, and I don't know if it's just the Chance Johan not being ready, and we really thought there was going to be more there. There might have been some other stuff behind the scenes that went down that we wanted to make some moves on this team, and it just didn't happen. But for whatever reason, we've known this team offensively just doesn't quite have that ceiling. I'm actually still encouraged by the last 5 games because at least I saw them hit shots. Now, games like tonight make you nervous, but we have seen that they've been pretty resilient and they can make some plays. But ultimately, every win is tough to get when you're a team like this. I'm just going to keep saying that. Don't get too high. Like, every time we go out and play, it's an opportunity to get. We need 3 to 4 to 5 more wins to really feel comfortable with the tournament. I think we'll get those, but nothing is guaranteed. And the good thing about college basketball, this is a long rant, good thing about college basketball, you can look at Tennessee and Alabama and be like, oh gosh, we got to play them 4 times. But if you get one of those, and if you get 2, let's say we get 2 out of 5 against Tennessee, A&M, and Alabama the rest of the way, I mean, that's massive. So each one of those games, if you can just find a way to get one against an elite team like that, it really shifts everything in your season from a seeding perspective, from a tournament perspective. So we need to look at those when you're an average team as opportunities, not as like dreading moments. Those are big opportunities to really make a statement that maybe we can on a good day beat a really good team.
Well, to end on a little bit of a pause on, I echoed. To end on a little bit of a positive note, we're still making history out there this season. We'll see what at the end how we feel about this season. But we just broke the record for top 25 ranked like weeks in a row, which is amazing and super cool to make history, even if it's just kind of like trailing off of last year a bit. The fact that this team is at least stayed real good. And that's a whole big thing. Bruce is talking about being a top 25 program, not just a top 25 ranked team, that consistently a top 25 program. And that's what we're doing when you're breaking records like we just did for programs, most top 25 in a row. And then also to have the number one home streak, even if it was just for 1 week. There was a lot of love going around about Neville Arena. And it's kind of like, I think a lot of people, announcers and stuff, talked about how great the atmosphere is. Then there was, at least, for the ones that don't pay attention, there was a statistic, they could point back to. And really, if they weren't already woken up to the fact that it's a great atmosphere in Neville Arena, they couldn't ignore it anymore, that statistic. So that was really fun. So just keep thinking about that like from our history perspective and everything, we're still like setting records. We're still making history and having fun out there. So this one sucked. Let's move past it. Try to enjoy the future games.
Yeah, and I just mention those real quick. We got the SEC Big 12 Challenge at West Virginia. It's a winnable game for sure. And I think I'm thinking tournament resume already. So it's an opportunity to get a win. It's going to be, they've played better lately, but it's a good opportunity to get a good Power 5 win, which I think every win is going to help us from here on out. And then a big one. When you lose this game, massive game next Wednesday, hosting Georgia in the rematch. Don't want to get swept by Georgia. Need to get another SEC win, start a new home winning streak, get the mojo back. So like the West Virginia game I want, and I think it would help cleanse.
I think after this one, it hurts to lose at West Virginia. Before, I really didn't care as much, and I still don't care as much about SEC games. But if we lose badly here, then lose badly West Virginia too, there's going to be some mindset issues. And all of a sudden, I do get worried about that Georgia game. So
you should be worried about the Georgia game either way.
True, they played pretty well so far this season. What are they ranked here? They're mid table, 3 and 4 in the SEC, which is crazy for what they've been doing the last couple of years.
So like, I'm just putting it out there, and then we get to really have some fun after that with some really hard games.
Georgia's above every win we have so far. Every team we beat is the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games is our 5 win. Or that Florida's up there, so that's good. Other than Florida, the rest of them are all the bottom of the league.
Yeah. So just 2 really good opportunities. Can we get to 18 and 4? That's a really good record. And then let's take our shots as we get down the tough stretch there. But hopefully we can flush this one and go on the road to old Morgantown, West Virginia, get a win, get back on the right track.
Cool. All right, guys. War Eagle, Matt.
War Eagle.